Liam, a young man whose calm demeanor often belied a meticulously strategic mind, stood surveying the vibrant scene unfolding within his home. Tonight was more than just a party, it was a celebration, a culmination of years of relentless effort, marking a significant academic achievement that had finally opened doors to a promising career. Laughter echoed through the tastefully decorated space, mingling with the infectious beat of the music. Friends, old and new, moved with easy camaraderie, drinks in hand, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of string lights. The atmosphere was precisely as Liam had envisioned, a perfect blend of sophisticated revelry and genuine connection. Every detail, from the curated playlist to the diverse food spread, spoke of his careful planning, a trait his friends admired and one that had, until now, served him well in navigating the complexities of his life. The evening was in full swing when a sudden, chilling silence rippled through the entrance hall, a stark contrast to the earlier cacophony. Heads turned, conversations faltered. Standing just inside the threshold, like storm clouds gathering on a clear horizon, were Liam's parents. They were uninvited, their presence a palpable disruption to the joyous energy. Their expressions were a familiar mosaic of disapproval and thinly veiled judgment, a look Liam had come to associate with their inherent inability to accept his lifestyle choices. Their generational and value clashes with him were a chasm that widened with each passing year. Almost immediately, their passive-aggressive commentary began, sharp whispers aimed not just at Liam, but at his friends, their attire, their music, their very existence in his home. The initial shock gave way to a simmering tension. Liam, ever the diplomat, tried to steer them towards a quieter corner, offering them refreshments, attempting to de-escalate the situation. Yet their presence was a force of nature, impossible to contain. They critiqued the volume of the music, the unhealthy snacks, the questionable company Liam kept. Their voices, though not overtly loud, carried an authority that cut through the festive mood, drawing unwanted attention. Liam felt the eyes of his friends upon him, a mixture of sympathy and awkwardness. He maintained his composure, a practiced mask he had worn countless times before, but beneath it a familiar knot of frustration tightened in his stomach. The party, his triumph, was slowly being poisoned by their presence. The inevitable confrontation arrived when his parents cornered him by the kitchen island, their faces stern, their voices low but laced with an undeniable threat. "This charade ends now, Liam," his mother declared, her eyes narrowed. His father nodded in agreement, adding, "Either you end this party, or we will, and there will be consequences you won't enjoy." The implications hung heavy in the air: financial repercussions, emotional blackmail, the well-worn tools of their control. Liam felt a hot surge of anger, a burning betrayal that threatened to erupt. Public humiliation loomed. He was trapped between their tyranny and the enjoyment of his friends. He remembered countless past instances, their demands, his passive compliance. But this time, something felt different. A flicker, faint but resolute, ignited within him. A new resolve, silent and steely, began to form. A determination to regain control, not through confrontation but through a maneuver they wouldn't expect. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. With a calm, almost unnerving smile, Liam turned from his parents. He walked towards the center of the room, the vibrant heart of the party, his gaze sweeping over the faces of his friends. He then slowly, deliberately raised his hand. The music, as if sensing the shift in atmosphere, began to fade, its beat dissolving into a curious silence. Guests, sensing a profound change, hushed their conversations, their eyes fixed on Liam, awaiting his next move. Liam's voice, when it came, was clear and steady, cutting through the anticipatory hush like a finely honed blade. He thanked everyone for coming, for filling his home with such wonderful energy and laughter, for making the night truly special. His words were genuine, resonating with a sincerity that momentarily disarmed even his parents, who watched from the periphery, their expressions a mixture of confusion and growing unease. Then, with a subtle shift in tone, barely perceptible, yet undeniably firm, he announced that the party was regrettably over. There was no explanation, no apology, no finger-pointing, just a calm, definitive statement. He offered no reason for this sudden conclusion, nor did he cast a single glance towards the architects of his decision. A wave of bewildered murmurs rippled through the guests. Disappointment flickered across many faces, quickly followed by a shared sense of understanding that transcended words. Liam maintained eye contact with several friends, a silent communication passing between them. His composure, unnervingly serene in the face of such an abrupt ending, conveyed a deeper message. This was not a surrender, but a strategic retreat, a quiet act of defiance. One by one, then, in small groups, guests began to collect their belongings, their initial confusion giving way to a quiet respect for Liam's unexpected resolve. Some offered him sympathetic smiles, a few patted his shoulder in silent solidarity, a couple even whispered assurances of future gatherings. They understood instinctively that something significant had just transpired, even if they couldn't quite articulate it. The house, so recently vibrant with life, began to empty, its echoes of laughter replaced by the soft shuffling of departing feet. As the last of his friends disappeared through the door, Liam's parents, now thoroughly perplexed and visibly frustrated, finally broke their silence. His mother stepped forward, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "Liam, what was that all about? You just ended it? What will your friends think?" His father, equally incensed, chimed in, demanding an explanation for what he perceived as an inexplicable capitulation. They attempted to draw him into a private argument, a familiar dance of accusation and justification they had perfected over decades. But Liam, for the first time, refused to engage. He met their gaze with an unnervingly calm demeanor, his eyes devoid of the usual defensiveness or emotional reaction they had grown accustomed to. He simply thanked them for coming, his voice flat, polite, and utterly devoid of any warmth or genuine welcome. There was no anger, no resentment in his tone, only a detached finality that left them disarmed and bewildered, their usual tactics rendered impotent. They were left with nothing to push against, no emotional leverage to exploit. The heavy silence that descended as the front door clicked shut behind them was profound, almost deafening. Liam stood alone in the remnants of his party, the once lively space now a tableau of scattered glasses, forgotten napkins, and the lingering scent of celebration. A profound mix of triumph and an unexpected wave of sadness washed over him. The victory was quiet, internal, yet undeniably potent. He had chosen peace over conflict, control over capitulation. But the sadness stemmed from the realization of how deeply entrenched the pattern of control had been, how much he had allowed it to shape his life. A single, solitary tear, unbidden and warm, traced a path down his cheek. It wasn't a tear of sorrow or regret, but a quiet, almost cathartic release, a culmination of years of suppressed frustration, of unspoken resentments finally finding an outlet. He surveyed the room, the scene of his quiet revolution. He hadn't just ended a party, he had, in that calm, unwavering moment, ended a cycle. The cycle of his parents' control, of his own passive submission. The realization bloomed within him, a tender but firm shoot pushing through hardened earth. He hadn't screamed, hadn't argued, hadn't even raised his voice. He had simply chosen a different path, a path of quiet assertion that held far more power than any outburst ever could. A nascent sense of empowerment, a fragile but undeniable self-worth began to take root in his heart. With a deep breath, Liam walked slowly towards a small, ornate wooden box tucked away on a shelf in his study. He opened it carefully, his fingers brushing against faded velvet. Inside, nestled among old keepsakes, was an old sepia-toned photograph. He pulled it out, his gaze falling upon his younger self, a child with a wide, innocent smile, playing freely in a sun-drenched park. In the background, slightly out of focus, stood his parents, their expressions unreadable even then. He looked at the image for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately, tore the photograph clean in half, a symbolic act of severing ties, of breaking free. The future was uncertain, a blank canvas stretching before him, but for the first time, it felt entirely his own. The first rays of dawn pierced through Liam's window, painting the disheveled living room in hues of soft gold and rose. He awoke not with the usual lingering weight of past grievances, but with a lightness he hadn't experienced in years, a profound sense of peace settling deep within his bones. The air, though still carrying faint traces of last night's festivities, felt crisp and new, imbued with the promise of a fresh start. Liam rose, moving with a quiet resolve, and began the methodical process of cleaning. Each discarded cup, each crumpled napkin, each forgotten party favor was collected and disposed of with a deliberate calm that mirrored his newfound clarity. This wasn't merely tidying, it was an act of purification, clearing not just the physical space, but also the mental and emotional clutter that had accumulated over a lifetime. His phone, resting on the kitchen counter, buzzed intermittently. Friends, having processed the abrupt end to the party, were reaching out. Messages of support flooded his inbox. "Dude, what was that? But seriously, proud of you for standing your ground," he read one. Another simply stated, "You handled that with so much class, Liam. Respect." There was no judgment, only admiration for his composure and the quiet strength he had displayed. Their understanding, unspoken yet palpable, reinforced his decision, solidifying the belief that he had, indeed, done the right thing. As the morning progressed, the inevitable happened. His phone rang, displaying his mother's name. Liam took a deep breath, the calmness he felt unwavering. He answered, his voice even and devoid of the usual deference. The conversation was brief, marked by a palpable shift in dynamics. His mother, expecting an apology or an explanation, was met with a polite but firm assertion of boundaries. Liam, without raising his voice or resorting to accusation, articulated his need for independence, for respect, and for a relationship built on mutual understanding rather than control. He didn't dwell on the past night's events, instead focusing on the future, on the new terms under which any continued relationship would exist. His parents, disarmed by his uncharacteristic assertiveness and lack of emotional response, found themselves without their usual levers of manipulation. The ripple effect of Liam's quiet defiance extended beyond his immediate family. Friends shared the story, not as gossip, but as a testament to his unexpected strength. Other family members, long accustomed to the established dynamic, expressed a mixture of surprise and profound respect. Liam, who had always been seen as the compliant son, had shown a side of himself that few knew existed. His actions inadvertently inspired others to examine their own relationships, their own boundaries. He found unexpected allies among distant relatives who had quietly resented his parents' overbearing nature, and his existing bonds with friends deepened, forged in the crucible of shared understanding and admiration. Emboldened by his internal shift, Liam began to pursue long-dormant dreams and interests. He enrolled in an advanced coding course he had always put off, started sketching again, a hobby he had abandoned under parental disapproval years ago. He embraced his authentic self, no longer feeling the invisible chains of his parents' expectations. The reserved nature that had characterized him began to recede, replaced by a quiet confidence, a serene self-assurance that was both magnetic and empowering. He was no longer defined by what others expected of him, but by what he truly desired for himself. A few weeks later, Liam began planning a new gathering, not a party, but a more intimate get-together. This time, it would be entirely on his terms, the guest list curated with care, inviting only those who genuinely supported his journey. He understood now that true strength wasn't found in shouting matches or public displays of anger, but in the unwavering conviction of one's self-respect. The future, once a pre-written script, was now a blank page, waiting for him to fill it with his own narrative. Liam stood in his living room, now fully restored and imbued with a new energy, a place that finally felt truly his own. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, each one a tiny world of possibility. He looked out at the dawn of a new day, his expression serene, determined. He had found redemption not in the fleeting satisfaction of revenge, but in the profound and lasting triumph of self-liberation. His victory was silent, but its resonance would echo through the rest of his life, a testament to the quiet power of defiance.